A 12-inch MacBook is just weird. Apple released it full of hope that this is the future of the next MacBooks, only to discontinue it a few years later, now hoping everyone forgets about how terrible of a device it really was. But how could anyone hate this portable, beautiful-looking piece of tech? Was this MacBook really that bad? Did it deserve its imminent failure? This 12-inch MacBook seemed to be really promising. You had a sharp Retina display, full-size keyboard, and it was something new. It was unbelievably thin. At its thickest point, it was just 0.5 inches or 1.3 centimeters. It's incredibly lightweight, just 2 pounds. And considering that an actual computer is inside there, it's pretty impressive. It's the smallest, most compact MacBook ever. It has a full-day battery life, made possible by a new way of integrating battery cells inside the Mac using terraced, contoured battery cells to save space. And it had the power to run the Mac OS, so it's gonna be a powerful Mac, right? The design, however, was probably the thing that attracted buyers the most. It's just looking beautiful, small, compact. It's available in the gold as well as the rose gold color. It's one of the few MacBooks available in a different color than silver and space gray. The all-metal design, a shiny Apple logo that wasn't backlit, it looked really nice. It was also available in small storages like 128GB, which makes it look almost like an iPad. An iPad is also meant to be used lightly. It's also a smaller device. It's offered in a similar storage options, and with the Magic Keyboard attached, it's basically a MacBook running iPad OS. So there are similarities between these devices, and I'll get to that later. But now we're getting to the problems of this 12-inch MacBook, and trust me, there are many. It's no wonder that the 12-inch MacBook got the label overpriced and underpowered, meaning you couldn't really do anything on it. It started at $12.99, which people consider to be absurd, really. But Apple tends to overprice their products, right? It can't be that bad. Yeah, but that's when the product actually works reliably or decently enough, which we can't say about this computer. One of the problems was that Apple had to rely on Intel to provide them the chip. Intel made these new Y-series chips that were really small, meaning ideal for this form factor, but also sucked. They were rushed and simply couldn't deliver the promised performance. But even if they did, the MacBook wasn't equipped with a fan, obviously because it wouldn't fit anywhere, it's just too big for this kind of computer. But this means that the Mac has no way to cool itself down when running too hot. Of course, no computer can overheat, so in order to prevent it, the software has to radically throttle the performance. Otherwise, your 3 open Google Chrome tabs would melt the chassis of the MacBook. It's interesting because an iPhone can do more than this Mac. The 12-inch MacBook is less powerful than the iPhone 11. It looks like Apple spent most of the time designing the product and making sure it looks sleek and small and compact, not really caring about other things like, making sure that the computer actually works. Even though this MacBook was the first one to have the USB-C port, pretty innovative I must admit, but it was also the only port you had, and guess what? It wasn't even a Thunderbolt. So only one port, except for, of course, the headphone jack on the other side, but yeah, I don't know if a headphone jack is something I'd go for, being severely limited by the dimensions of the computer. So if you wanted to charge the Mac while having some kind of external drive connected, there was no way to do so. Unless you had a hub or different accessory, but that defeats the purpose of a small portable MacBook. CNET1 published an article saying that this 12-inch MacBook is actually better than the other MacBooks, like the Pro or Air, but that they had no idea about all the failures and shortcomings that would emerge in the future. And it wasn't just performance. If you could only do light work like editing documents on it reliably, then Some people would still be fine with it, but it was not reliable at all. The 2015 first model had it worst. If you happen to own that model, it's very likely that there is going to be something wrong with it. Many users reported common flaws like the display getting delaminated, or some crucial parts of the computer like the USB port, the only one you have, simply ceasing to work. The same thing with the SSDs or even the actual CPU. You could wake up one day and notice that it just doesn't work anymore, having no idea why. It's just not reliable, which is a huge deal since we're talking about Apple products. The 2015 model was basically a ticking time bomb. It got better with the future revisions though, and the most reliable one is the 2017 model. So if you by any chance plan on getting one, just skip the 2015 model and head for the latest revision released 2 years later. The good thing about the 2017 model is that it just won't stop working randomly anymore, but keep in mind that it still has the butterfly keyboard, the one that has no tactility, where keys don't travel much. Some keys get stuck often and it generally sucks. It's no wonder that Apple stopped manufacturing the butterfly keyboard completely and now no MacBooks are equipped with it. It also has the terrible 480p iSight webcam. I get it, the Mac is small so it's hard to fit things inside, but one of the few things you could actually reliably do on this MacBook was making FaceTime video calls. But since the quality of the camera was just bad, you couldn't do that either. So yeah, it didn't look very good for this MacBook, and that's also the reason why they discontinued it. But I think it's a shame. This computer had a lot going for it. The most loved aspect was the design, look, and portability. It's the ideal laptop to bring with you on a flight to watch movies, give to your kids, or just have it laying around the house as a secondary computer. For consuming content, it has a nice Retina screen, pretty good speakers, and for the general UI, it has a very nice large trackpad. It's huge in relation to the rest of the device, and it didn't really break or was problematic. So although it had some perks and generally speaking, it wasn't supposed to be a bad product, but all the problems and failures significantly outweighed all the good stuff about it. One thing people seem to consistently agree on is the design plus M1 chip. This thing with an M1 would be insane. This means that the performance wouldn't be an issue anymore, so it wouldn't overheat. A good example is the current MacBook Air, whether with the M1 or M2, that is fanless, but this causes no problems because it runs Apple's custom chips and it just doesn't overheat. If Apple were to release an updated MacBook, they would probably want to shrink the bezels. The 12-inch MacBook has pretty big bezels, which back in 2015 wasn't really a problem. Nobody really cared about such stuff. But now it's getting a bit serious with the all-screen designs and notches. It's almost a standard now to have almost no bezels. However, there is a problem. How do you achieve this on this particular model? Well, there are two options. You either shrink the bezels, and therefore also the entire frame of the MacBook, which would cause many problems. The device is already small enough, and making it smaller doesn't seem to be viable. Or the second option would be to bump up the screen, which seems obvious, but it would get really close to a 13-inch screen, which already exists in the 13-inch MacBook. So I believe that it would be really confusing for the customer. So yeah, I'm not sure what Apple should do with the bezels in case they release a new MacBook. Besides that, there are multiple possible reasons why Apple hasn't brought this MacBook back to life, but I think that one of them is the threat to iPad. As you probably know, the main complaint about the iPad is that it's too powerful for the software it comes with. In other words, iPad OS severely limits what the iPad is capable of. You can't run macOS apps and the full versions of some video editors, photo editors, or other professional software. So I think that if Apple brought the 12-inch MacBook back, it would disrupt the sale of iPads. It has the same form factor, it's portable, powerful, already comes with a keyboard so you don't need to buy it separately, and it can run all the full-fledged apps that you can't on the iPad. But for now, we're stuck with another rumor about Apple bringing this device back, and yeah, that would be awesome, but I don't really believe that they want to do it. They have products ready for multiple types of users, and this one, in my opinion, would mess around with it a lot. Apple was confident that they can pull it off with the 12-inch MacBook, but it didn't play out the way they planned. Anyways, this is the story of why this particular Apple computer failed.